Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. No, because the OBS kind of glitched. Hello,
Uh,
everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Loose Canon. It has been a while again because our last episode I didn't have internet because a really bad snowstorm took out internet for like 6 hours that day. And today I opened my windows so I can get a lot of natural light on me. Today I opened my windows and it's snowing outside, and I was like, "Oh no!" I had a small panic attack because I was like, "Don't do it again! Don't do me like that!" So how have you been, Rana?
Good. Yeah. It's a new year, a new
Mm-hmm.
dawn, a new life, whatever. Just back at it. Here we
Yeah,
go. Witch Queen right around the corner.
yeah. It will be in 9 days, and our next episode will be the weekend after the release of Witch Queen. I'm very excited for many aspects of it. The thing that I can't wait for the most though is the new because they mentioned, I'm not sure if they mentioned it in a podcast or an article somewhere in the Vidoc, but they mentioned having more aspects than the ones that we were shown specifically from, I think it was raids or potentially the legendary campaign. And that makes me want to do those immediately, which I'm usually like, oh, I'll do it
Wow.
eventually. But now I'm like, no, 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 I need to get in there now because I want these void aspects. The void subclasses look amazing.
Yeah, they really do. It was nice to hear them um on podcast. I forget the gentleman's name.
There
But
was
he
too
was
many
he
on
was
DCP.
yeah, DCP. He really fleshed them out
Hmm.
as far as the void subclasses. So yeah, I'm really excited. Uh, once we get our hands on. Man, Void has been. Oh, how long has it been?
Since it's in existence, I mean,
Well,
Hunter's got it
yeah. I
in
mean,
Taken King. We had a whole
so
year without the void.
they transplanted Void into D2, but it was
Hmm.
really pretty much unchanged for the
Well, I
most
mean,
part. We had the. I'm sorry, I take that back. We had the entire, which was like the Blade Dancer but Void
yeah,
version.
yeah. Well, so when it came into D2, it was almost unchanged. There were definitely
Yes.
differences between D1 and D2, and then a year after
Yeah.
we had the middle tree, which really shook it up for
Yeah.
Void specifically.
So like the middle trees are what we got that were significantly different.
Hmm.
And that was much later. But all the basic voids have been unchanged for
Yeah,
since we got it.
yeah, and I mean, I don't think this is really going to change them up so much as it's gonna like just refine how you play it, which I'm
Yeah.
really excited about. It sounds like hunters will have and hunters and warlocks and titans will have their core aspect of invisibility, devour, and overshielding. It sounds like they'll have it a great deal of the time, where for titans never always having an overshield, like what's not to like about that? Hunters always being and quickly to invisible states, and warlocks constantly regenerating your health, like through devour. Like those are really awesome things, and the idea that in a pinch I might be able to perform something that triggers the devour on a hunter is also very exciting, and that's what I think
Yeah, that
the
is
the
pretty cool.
aspects will be, the raid
I like that
aspects.
they've I like that they've kind of defined void as a whole, and they've given that
Hmm.
whole void feeling to all of the different classes. And now, like for instance, suppressor grenades are
Hmm.
available to everyone, and hunters, can use them. And before that wasn't a thing, but they've kind of helped. And just me speaking for a hunter because that's what I play, but they've kind of helped take the hunter and allow him to be even more supportive.
Hmm.
Um, and then neat little things that I was looking at were like the tracking arrows. That's a
Hmm.
neat idea. And leaning into the whole if you make a kill, you get more invisibility, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. Like the pay for payoff, the
Hmm.
play for payoff is more is a higher dynamic.
Yeah, yeah,
So it
absolutely.
evokes you to make it, and it makes you lean into the void abilities and kills to get your ultimate reward, which is like the invisibility and the mobility and that keen sight stuff.
Hmm.
So, but
Uh,
the supportive void class was like, when we first got it as a hunter, that
hmm.
was that was a game changer because hunters are
Yeah.
super.
They didn't even have something that like pretended to be support. It
No,
was
no,
exclusively just yourself.
it's so selfish.
Like at least now, like with Arc Strider, you have Middle Tree, the whole spinning reflect. Like that's kind of supportive. It's still really selfish, but it's like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
technically you can tank hits with it for a second.
Hold on one
The
second.
Go on,
Sorry.
go on. Oh no, can you not? I can't hear you if you're talking. Oh no. Well, hopefully that's an easy fix and doesn't need a whole restart of your computer this time. What I was going to say though was
Go for it.
okay, well there you go. You're back. What I was going to say was that they said how like you were saying in defining the void, one of the aspects of void is getting an overshield, and we have other classes right now who have ways to get overshields, and they basically made it sound like that's going away, like that is being like paired off for the void exclusively. And I really like the idea of each energy, each force as it's called in certain areas, having their own identity and having like their tent poles of their verbs of what make them them. And so, uh, in the collector's edition, we actually get some of that where Ikora, this whole collector's edition is Ikora, um, kind of her notes on herself, on the hidden, on stasis, on people talking to her, her messages back and forth between Zavala, someone uh, who claims to have died 13,000 years ago, various things. But kind of throughout it, you have a continuing theme of the morality of using stasis, and is stasis dangerous? And there's actually a really interesting entry kind of early on in it, which talks about if stasis is a virus, and it kind of talks about why stasis behaves differently now than it did a year ago.
Hmm.
But before we get into that, we have a lore card this week. I don't have a whole nice, pretty image queued up, but I do have it on the screen. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
So we were a little bit late, getting to the podcast. So this was a little bit fresher at the time, but it's a new year, and so I did a lore card on the lunar tiger shell,
Hmm.
which it wasn't available to get in game yet, but we could all see it. So at the time, I felt it was necessary to put it out because of the timing. And I don't know if you know how the Chinese New Year works, but each year it ends on the January 21st
Hmm.
for everyone. And then there's like this 10-day hiatus where there's no there's no New Year, and then all of a sudden a New Year happens, right? Um, so the New Year of the Tiger is wrapped up in this shell. So if you look at the shell, you can see there's a little tiger. He's sitting on a wood ball, and he's
Hmm.
surrounded by the jade sculpture that was carved. Both of these are kind of indicative of Chinese art. They use a lot of jade. Um, it's an easy carvable material, and then they use a lot of wood, which is typically shellacked,
Hmm.
and it had to show the grain and stuff like that. So this goes way back to like Ming Dynasty stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of artifacts that harken back to these days where they were doing this stuff, and I like that the Bungie artists kind of put it in game. So I picked the shell because there was a whole slew of Chinese New Year themed items, or Year of the Tiger items, I should say.
Hmm.
Um, and they all have this kind of theme about the tiger because it's the year of the tiger. And I thought that was also neat because, as you know, Bungie and Tiger Man and Destiny as a whole, and the Year of the Tiger, and this being the anniversary for the whole Bungie, just kind of culminating to this like power peak, right? Like
Yeah.
this is them, and so it was neat to kind of like to really kind of think about all those things that wrap together. So the flavor text is for ghosts who pounce on what they want. Um, so I pounced on it and put it up as lore card. But what that means is the characteristics of the tiger, uh, as you learn, is kind of like each particular animal. It is representative of that year, and so for like certain people born in those years, and it's cyclical, so like it changes. But people born in the year of the tiger are supposed to have certain personality traits, kind of like kind of like the regular zodiac that most people know about in Western culture.
Mhm.
But it's different. It's not based on months. It's based on years, and so like there's these cycles of years. So if you were born in this year, everyone born in this year should have these certain personality traits. If you lean into that stuff. So for the Chinese New Year festival, it starts on February 1st and it ends 1 year on which would be February 21st. So according to the Chinese zodiac in 2022, this is the year of the tiger. There are 12 Chinese zodiac animals. They're based on various species who turn up in the great race in folklore. So the way they describe it is um, there's a tale, it's a story about a great race, and there were all these animals that arrived. And so the tiger is known to be the king of the beast in China. He came in third in the race.
Hmm.
The Jade Emperor invited certain animals to participate in the race, which were which 12 different species showed up, basically. Um, so as a reward, the years are named in order in which each animal finished the race. So large and small animals had to cross the track or course, which also included a river at the end. But the rat was first because he was riding on the back of an ox as he crossed the river and jumped right before the ox was able to.
I've never actually heard this story about the Chinese zodiac before.
Yeah. So there's like a bunch of variations on it, but that's the gist of it. And I didn't want to get into like all the minutia of the folklore story,
Hmm.
but that's why they have different animals that represent those here. So it's kind of like um it's kind of like this neat folkloric tale about all the different animals that have to do with each year because how they complete the race shows you their characteristics. So, like the rat taking advantage of certain situations and being able to,
Hmm.
jump at opportunity is very much like a trait of someone born in the year of a rat. The ox being, steadfast and bull true and always getting to the end in a nice, efficient manner, but never coming in first. It's like,
Hmm.
and then the tiger who just ultimately is able to dominate the entire course, but then he comes to the river and he's like, water, and so his own little things can get in his way, but he's always like ready to pounce on any opportunity, but he gets in his own way. And so, like
Hmm.
these things that happen in the folklore are really neat because as they're doing the race, they're really telling a story about each individual animal or beast, um, as they call it. And so this is the year of the tiger, uh, the animal that came third in the race.
So it went rat, ox, tiger. Isn't there a dragon?
Yeah, there's actually, well, so it goes. I mean, I can tell you all of them real quick.
Yeah, yeah. I want to hear
Yeah.
them
Okay. All right. So let me pull it up. I have to pull up my notes.
because I know there's rat, ox, dragon, uh, tiger,
Yeah.
monkey,
So the cool thing
bird,
about this is
chicken.
yeah, there's a rooster.
Yeah, rooster,
So there's
pig.
rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, pig. But there's also the more known versions, which would be, like you were pointing out, the and so this is where it gets weird because it changed. The
Okay.
rabbit was became a cat.
I've
So there
always
was a
heard rabbit. You're saying that cat is more common than rabbit?
no, well, no, rabbit was more common, but just not too long ago they changed some of the zodiac symbols, and one of them was the rabbit, which became a cat.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets really kind of complicated. But basically, I guess they felt over the years that it didn't really represent the personality traits well, and so um, this is it's really complicated. So, like asterism and Chinese zodiacs have to do with a chart which has it tells a story about bad bloodletting days and when
Mm-hmm.
to guard against demons. And this chart it contains nine figures that symbolize the elements in geomancy, and um, basically the eight trigrams, which are surrounded by the 12 animals of the months of the years, help to protect the entire universe in a way or somehow. Because in asterism, the heavens or the central plane of like perfection is guarded by or managed by the emperor. And
Mm-hmm.
so the 12 animals are kind of like the pillars the that surround you know that whole thing. um so Forever they've been carving jade figures. Jade is naturally white, or more commonly white than green, but it's more popular.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's why it comes up more in culture and stuff like that. Um, so I guess if we just go off of the traditional one, you'd have dog, pig, rat, bull, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, or I've heard goat, but ram, monkey, rooster. Um, and so, like, I think a lot of this has to do with translation and cultural identity. And so, some of these things are up to change depending on the region that you've learned it in, or depending on the time. Because just like everything, things change a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Is that all you had?
Yeah, that's all I had. I mean, I
Okay.
could talk for that stuff on day for days, but it's not really relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to bog the whole thing down.
Yeah. Okay.
But like,
I
okay,
just
so
want to make sure.
real quick, if you were born in the year of the tiger, that means you were born in 2022 or 2010, 1998, 1986. You see how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So like every 12 years, that's the year that you're in. So like I'm a rabbit,
Mm-hmm.
but I could also be a cat.
See, I don't like that. I'm a monkey in the Chinese zodiac.
Yeah, so you're a little troublemaker.
Well, I guess I got that right. that that feels a little accurate. I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what it meant.
I guess it's like that's one of the traits.
Yeah, that's funny. Um, so then to get into uh the CE, I'm so bummed out. Uh my collector's edition shipped last week and it shipped last week. It hasn't actually shipped. It's sitting in the facility.
Oh
It hasn't
no.
moved since then. So I'm at the point where I'm like, maybe I'm gonna get it on fucking time, which would be a real bummer. Because there are things about it that I want to talk about, but we're gonna have to talk about them later. Because I want to talk about them physically in hand, and maybe actually they will have some more relevance in the game and in the Witch Queen
I would really
because
like that. Yeah, that would be awesome.
it's just the thing I want to talk about. I don't know if you're thinking the same thing I am. It's been progressively increasing in repetitiveness. Bungie keeps dropping it. They keep including it more and more and more and more and more. And I feel like they're doing it for a reason. They're trying to like show people this thing without actually directly saying it. And they're trying to get a whole lot of people on board, and then they're gonna like drop this revelation on us.
Yeah.
Um, but since I do not have the collector's edition myself, we are lucky enough that a person by the Reddit username of Novanades scanned copies, and a user as well by the name of Gravestone transcribed them, which is great because this is 31 pages that I would have had to transcribe myself. And that wouldn't, I was going to do that too. I was going to do that. And I was like, oh, God, I guess I'll do that like on this day. And it was like the very next day they posted a transcript. So we were using their transcripts.
How fortuitous.
Yeah. I get lucky like that. Very lucky like that. But so, like I said, a lot of this has to do with hidden. Usually, it has to do more closely with the expansion topic, Savathun. We had Clovis Bray, not Aramis, though. We had Clovis Bray, not Aramis, and we had nothing for uh, Forsaken, but in Destiny 2, we had Callus's book and Taken King. We had Cade's book. So that's actually a
Yeah.
good point. We got Cade's book and Taken King. But I mean, Cade was, and actually, this is kind of more like Taken King then in that respect, because Cade was kind of the figurehead of the expansion, like the non-enemy figurehead, the person that you're rallying behind. And this is all about Ikora. It's several hidden reports, trans communication transcripts on their Vanguard internet, uh, shit like that. She's getting hate mail from the Drifter. That's in here. So there's a whole bunch of things, and we went through. We picked out a few of the interesting things, and there's a number of interesting things, but there's also like 2 hours of reading. So we're not going to go through every little detail. If you do want to find it, it is very easily found. Um, just search for it. I'm sure you'll find it. I'll try to get a link for the description of the show. And so let's get into it, right?
Yep.
So the first entry is from one of the hidden agents, Chalco, who later on we're going to see referenced a few more times. So it's pretty interesting to see them. They are a hunter, and they are reporting on unpaired ghost communities. And so it's a hidden report. And in this, one of the interesting things that we get is that he mentions how I get the feeling that they're just sensing the same way we can divine the character of a long dead corpse, whatever you want to call that faculty, they're using it. So, like when a ghost goes to a body, they can kind of feel out, like, is this a person that deserves to be
Yeah. It's like a
revived?
hint of a spark. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that we still really just don't know like anything about. And it actually goes on further in the sixth paragraph of this. These ghosts without guardians argue about two things. One is the exact nature of their connection to their undiscovered guardian. Is each ghost predestined to find one and exactly one soul to raise as a guardian? Or does each ghost have a taste, a set of preferences that many dead people might satisfy? Could a ghost potentially raise anyone? Does the choice of a partner lie within the ghost, or is it a mission assigned by the traveler? So that's like
Yeah.
a huge thing, like it's very popular belief in the community that a ghost has a singular guardian, because we've kind of heard that suggested before, but I mean, science disproves science, right? So like eventually it could be discovered that ghosts can have multiple guardians, and
Yeah.
there are those that do believe it. I'm not in that camp personally. I am in the camp of one ghost per guardian, because if multiple guardian if a guardian could have multiple ghosts, then there are guardians that ghosts would be like, oh, that one's a hero. I'm gonna go revive that guy because his ghost
Right.
died, and make sure he doesn't stay dead. You know,
Right. What prevents them from just, yeah, like
like
prioritizing?
yeah, like Eris Morn, absolute hero. I mean, obviously she went through some shit, so maybe she's not the first choice.
Yeah.
But there are absolute heroes out there that like ghosts
So,
would be falling over themselves to revive Zavala.
so I'm in the camp. So I've long believed this. I have had this theory since D1.
Hmm.
But um, it basically, and I don't really have anything to base it on, but I've always believed that at the beginning of a ghost's initial search, he doesn't know, or they don't know what they're doing per
Hmm.
se. All they're looking for is a spark, and they don't really understand it themselves, but they have this thing inside of them that knows. It's like two magnets.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like attraction, right? So it's like they know it's out there, and all they know is they have to keep seeking until they find it, and they don't know exactly what it is, but they scan, they scan, they scan, and then suddenly there it is. And what I think it is, it's a spark that is laid as a remnant of the person or the entity before, that allows them to attune their light to
Hmm.
them. And what is significant about that entity or person? I feel it was sacrifice. It was some sort of great sacrifice that they did in their previous life that allowed them to have a resonance of their soul, or the fragment of themselves remaining in that matter, carbon, basic dust, bone, whatever it is that's
Hmm.
left after their fleshy, vessel died, right?
Yeah.
And so the ghost is somehow to attune his frequency to that spark, and then raise them, or create a risen from that.
Mhm.
And there's the conundrum, is like some risen don't necessarily think that's a gift.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And things change, like you learn in this life, that it's not as easy as good and bad, or evil versus good, that kind of thing that
Hmm.
we've learned, that we were taught when we were kids, that the knight against the dragon in the tower. What you learn is the dragon in the tower was a victim of circumstance, or you learn that people are put in certain situations where they have to survive, and that from the outside it looks like they may have been a bad person, but on the inside they were a victim of their own circumstance, or locked in that scenario and they had no way out, and so they have to survive. And ultimately this game is a matter of
Hmm.
survival. And just like the thing that they wrestle with in lore constantly, is this idea of, when is survival okay? When is
Yeah.
survival at such a high cost morally okay, right? And so, sacrifice is you know, uh, the ultimate, like, I don't know, purity, I guess, is what I
Hmm.
would say. And so that's why I believe that sacrifice has to do with, like, when the drifter, when the speaker talks about, the best thing you could do is go kill yourself, basically, when
Yeah.
he's talking to Gaul,
Yeah.
um,
I
but
mean,
what
he
he's
mentioned sacrifice as well.
yeah, so what he's saying is, that guardians are guardians because of their natural ability to sacrifice themselves above all. And there's certainly vast dynamics with this. There's a whole spectrum of sacrifice, and how hard do you lean to the left or the right? Like, look at the praxics. They're so far right on the sacrifice that they just conflagrate in any situation to try to annihilate everything around them as soon as they realize, oh my God, I'm going to die and this is it.
Yeah. That really raises a question because like I okay, so there was a lot said there. So first, I think
Sorry.
no, that's fine. That's fine. That's great. In fact, I think that this corroborates your theory that when the ghosts first came, they didn't really know what they were doing. They were just searching for that something, whatever that
Yeah.
something was, because they even question. Is this a mission get assigned by the traveler? Because if it
Yeah.
were, wouldn't they know it? Like they don't know it, you know? So
Yeah.
um, but then, and Mother Codfish has brought this up in chat, and it's one of my favorite topics. Cyril is a guardian who was revived and was so upset about being revived that he started hunting other ghosts to
Yeah.
prevent other people from being revived. He's like, the dead
Yeah.
should stay dead, this mentality. And so maybe, in my opinion, maybe it's not exactly sacrifice, but like super strong conviction, which that could help you, or that could go the exact opposite way, and you get
Well,
someone like Cyril.
so like if you analyze people characters in the lore that are in the middle, you get a
Mm-hmm.
really good perspective. And the person that's best at that, who's woke, is Ulan Tan. So
Mm-hmm.
Ulan Tan is the perfect example of that waffling in the middle, having to have a perfect balance with the universe. His idea is that if you really want to save the universe, you should just give it all up.
Yeah.
Because he's basically saying that what you're doing is you're playing a game. Whether you feel like you should play the game or you shouldn't play the game is irrelevant because there are no winners in the end. No matter what, the game will end. Or that's kind of like, if you think about it in that kind of analogy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to truly overcome the game is to decide not to play. It's his kind of viewpoint. Is like you've been gifted with this light.
Yeah.
But every time you use it, you're driving yourself closer to an end game. So
Yeah.
whether that be darkness or light, whatever.
And so, you do have those guardians who are very good with their ghosts. They bond well with their ghosts, and then you do have those ones like Drifter, potentially even like Ulan Tan and Cyril, as we mentioned, and that's not entry 7, paragraph 7 here, where Chalco reports. They also argue over how one should interact with their chosen guardian. Should ghosts accede to whatever their partner demands, or is a ghost relationship with a guardian a negotiated bond between equals and codependents? So, like, I think Cyril's ghost. I forgot what happened with Cyril's ghost. I know Reza Lazir's ghost kept trying to prevent him from going down the path that he was going down, becoming Dredge and
Yeah,
Yor. And
yeah,
eventually, Dredge and Yor was like, "Get the fuck out, or I'm gonna kill you." And so
yeah,
then he got the fuck out.
yeah. Yeah, he was pretty harsh about it. He was basically yelling at the dog to go away.
Hmm.
It's that iconic scene where the kid's like, you don't know what's going to happen if you keep, stay with me or whatever. And so he basically banishes his ghost uh,
Yeah.
before becoming a monster
Hmm.
because he knew he
Yeah.
was
Before
about to
that
become.
final step, like he was like
Yeah,
right there on
yeah.
being a horrible monster.
But see, that's another thing. Like in this game, so if you think about that specific scenario, he
Yeah.
sacrificed himself because he
Or is
knew
that
that
conviction?
well, see, that's the thing. What is the root cause of conviction? What is the root
Yeah.
cause of anything, right? I mean, if you can debase everything to like one central point of decision making, where do we go? Do we go yes, no, or somewhere in the middle?
Hmm.
If you don't decide, it's like the trolley problem. If you don't decide, something bad's going to happen regardless of your indecision.
Hmm.
So, where do you want to be on the you know the yes or no choice? And Ulan Tan was like, I don't want to play.
Yeah. And I thought this paragraph was really interesting, especially coming off of Beyond Light and thinking about the future, because while this season, or not this season, this year we're not getting any new darkness powers, it is pretty well believed and agreed upon that we will eventually be getting more. And stasis still is kind of like uneasy. There are people who are outright against it. There are people who are
Yeah.
like, I don't think you should use it, but I'm not going to stop you from using it. There are people who are just going like full dark. Like even in the community, there are people who are like, fuck the light, like fuck the traveler.
Yeah.
You know, there's
Yeah.
and so in Beyond Light, our ghost kind of questions like, is this the right thing to do? And then ultimately decides, I'm here with you. Like I have enough faith in you that you will make the right choice, that I will stand by you. And part of me wonders how long will that last? You know, does that last forever? Do we get to a point where even our ghost is like, you've gone too far. Like you I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And even if we're not dredging, you're just wielding too much dark. And it's like, I don't feel safe with you. You know, like, what's the breaking point?
Yeah. Like truly, how far can someone go? And you know, that's another thing too. Is like how much of this ghost guardian relationship or risen relationship
Mm-hmm.
was was originally like it's almost like two parts of a soul splitting. You know, like how do we know? You know, how do we even know that the ghost isn't already a part of that spark somehow, just trying to find a way back into the body? And
Mm-hmm.
this is the separation of soul and body, and the ghost is just yearning to be back a part of that guardian, and it's somehow some like homunculus or like some, you know, I mean, the thing that bothers me the most about like, okay, so the three things that come up a lot are body, soul, and mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's the body, then there's the soul, and then there's the mind. The mind is calculating, using reasoning, trying to bring in all of the scientific, factual knowledge of the environment they're in, which is this universe that basically just uh, that makes up everything around you, which can be ultimately fallible because it's dependent on nature. And so the mind has to make sense of what its reality is, which
Mm-hmm.
is everything it can that relies on its senses, which are the most easily tricked of all things in the universe. So like you've got your sight, your taste, you know, your smell, your touch, all of those things that you rely on. So there's the mind,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the body, which is like the vessel. It's holding the mind, and then there's this third, which is almost an ethereal, um, just a it's a compromised ideal of the soul, which is this. If you believe that the soul exists, it's this driving anima that creates the motor function for the universe to go. And
Mm-hmm.
so the soul and the mind constantly being wrapped up in that yin yang turmoil with one another are trapped in this body or this vessel or this environment. And so Bungie, everything in life revolves around these struggles of
Yeah.
the body and the mind and the soul. And so if you think about it in a way, the ghost kind of represents the soul. The
Yeah.
guardian represents the mind, and then the game and the people and the bodies are the bodies.
So let me propose to you something that's very similar, but a little different. What if the ghost and the guardian, the ghost and the risen, are some collection of the id, the ego, and the superego? So
Sure.
like the
Yeah.
risen can be one or two, and the ghost can be any of the other one or the other two.
Sure.
So, for an example, uh, I need to just make sure I'm reading this right. For Osiris, for example, the id is the set of uncoordinated instinctual desires.
Hmm.
So partly he'd be the id, right? The superego plays the critical and moralizing role. Absolutely
Yeah.
Segura. Like
Yeah.
100% that is Segura.
Yeah.
And the ego is the organized, realistic agent that mediates between the instinctual desires of the id and the critical superego.
Sure.
And so maybe like he is ego and id, and then Segura is the superego, kind of being the moralizing role, where
Yeah. So
he.
those would all be faculties of the mind, or like
Mhm.
Freud would say, you know, a part of the super. almost like a part of the superposition of the human mind. So like
Yeah.
if you break it down into the triad of the different uh, parts of the mind, and then
But I
so
don't.
it's weird. It's weird that um, they use they use a lot of scenarios where people's prides
Mhm.
or it's just funny because like it goes back to mythology, it goes back to folklore, it goes back to all the tales. Like people's own fallible nature comes back to ultimately wreck face, right?
Mhm.
Whatever your bad tendencies are or your good tendencies, no good deed goes unpunished. Whatever makes up you is ultimately you,
Mhm.
and so whatever gets in your way is ultimately going to be you getting in your own way because you're kind of like this fallible creature. You
Mhm.
know, Osiris is hell bent on his hell bent decision making around the Vex, and leaving everybody because he thought I saw a future where some horrible stuff was going to happen. If I tell you about it, it's going to come true. And
Mhm.
so he went off to do this fight against the Vex, but that got in his way. He got in his own way,
Yeah.
just like a lot of characters.
Yeah. But I think I did a bad job explaining. What I mean to say is that the ghost and the guardian are like one embodiment, kind of just separated into two. So like there is only one ghost to one guardian or to one risen. They have their chosen one. They are literally looking for themselves, just in like a
Yeah,
different body. That's
yeah,
kind of what I was
I can
going
see
with.
that too. Yeah, that's initially what I thought when Destiny first came out. That was the first thing I thought. It was like, is the ghost just trying to find its former self?
Like
Like
the other fragment
in a
of
way.
itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the fact that they say keywords like fragments, ghost fragments. Like
Mm,
these are all word cues that they love to throw as like little Easter eggs in the game. You got to
yeah.
tune into those word cues because they're little hints that
Yeah,
pay off
absolutely.
later.
So then the last paragraph here, he wrote, they see the hive as exploited underclass for goodness sake, victims of a cosmic parasite that tricked the poor krill into eternal slavery. No wonder they haven't found their guardians. They don't want to help anyone kill hive, which is kind of a scary thing leading into Witch Queen. Like, c- could it just have been Savathun convinced some ghost to come resurrect some hive?
Dude, that's an awful thought.
Right? That's the first time we've really gotten that, like, concrete. Like, there are hive sympathizers among the ghosts.
Right.
Uh,
Well, like you can sympathize with pretty much anything if you think about it long enough.
yeah, but I mean, sometimes you just shouldn't. Like the hive,
I
you can be
know.
like, man, 2 million years ago, you guys weren't that bad, but you've got too many,
But
two
now
million years of a track
you've had
record of
enough.
being shit.
Yeah, yeah, you've had enough time to turn that around, haven't you?
Yeah.
Ugh.
And then it leads into a new section about the tenets of the hidden. So Ikora made the hidden, I think. It's kind of
Yeah,
in
it
the
sounds
air.
like it. Yeah,
It it used to be, my thought at least, it used to be that Ikora inherited the hidden, but it sounds more and more like that she created them through her life experiences. And so just to kind of go through these to pick up the pace a little bit, the first tenet is to find thyself. The second is to know thyself. Inside the know thyself uh, tenet, she annotated a line saying how like she used to have these perverse thoughts about wanting to shatter her ghost and astound her critics with a display of her full power, and to die along Osiris and be reborn as one entity in an eternity of fire, and to burn poor Chalco to a temporary smoking smear and laugh at her astonishment.
yeah. So, if
Was
you don't
Chalco a
know out
woman?
there, if you don't know that out there, Ikora, before she really kind of became a Vanguard mentor,
Hmm.
She was a rebel. She was very much an iconoclastic, and like her shotgun was the perfect example of that. The word iconoclast comes up in the lore, and it's related to Ikora. But she had, and what does that mean? Iconoclasts' true nature is to tear down idols that people worship or elevate to a high status of godlyhood, and all they want to do is tear that down because they don't believe that anybody should be in a hierarchical position of authority and treated that way.
Hmm.
So iconoclasts are very punk rock. They want to tear it down and save art for art's sake. They want to save, the whole existence for existence sake because they feel like the natural world is really what should prevail, and nobody should be like this pyramid scheme of hierarchy. Like no one should be at the peak telling everyone what to do or leading the masses. They believe
Yeah.
that it's kind of like this. It's almost anarchy, but not. And
Uh,
so yeah, so Ikora, being a badass crucible fighter, it kind of leans into her previous nature. So sure, naturally she would feel that way, right?
yeah.
Inside of her own mind because she's wrestling with growth and becoming an more mature.
So just to kind of like really skip down, there are a number of titles for books Ikora is kind of pitching to her
Yeah.
ghost. So just to kind of skip to the middle of them, uh, actually, I shouldn't start from the start because I'll spend more time just trying to find it. An Exegesis of the Light by Ikora Ray, first draft. How to Understand the Light by Ikora Ray, first draft. Why the Light is Not Boring by Ikora Ray, first draft. What Illuminates Us by Ikora Ray, first draft. Is it natural? It is natural for guardians to prefer the new and rare, but let's be cautious about it by Ikora Ray, first draft. Everyone wanted Galahorn, but look what happened when you all got one, or why mass tendencies and guardian behavior can, in retrospect, be destructive by Ikora Ray, ninth draft. I'm not your mom, but sometimes mothers have good advice by Ikora Ray, second draft. There's a reason we switched from Edgewalker to Blade Dancer, and I want to touch on that by
Yeah.
Ikora Ray, first draft. Familiarity shouldn't breed contempt by Ikora Ray, first draft. Puppies, wheat bread, and doing what's right, transgressive thrills, and contempt for the wholesome by Ikora Ray, first draft. Why the need to commit violence in defense of light predisposes us to moral compromise by I can't find a good title, first draft. When the truth is not in the middle, why the everyday need for compromise tricks us into grand moral keyboard smash, first draft. Guardians won't read this unless it drops an engram anyway by Ikora Ray, first draft. They'll just say Ikora should have died instead of Cade. Cade would have been down with stasis and throw it out by Ikora Ray, first draft. I hate philosophy and want to go back to the Crucible by Ikora Ray, first
Yeah.
draft. Delete all those things I wrote. No, this isn't a title, Ophiuchus. Just delete them all by Ikora Ray, first draft.
That's a perfect little gift that the writers gave to people who read the lore because the it gives you a little bit insight into how the writers feel, with this game and writing for this game in this
Yeah.
environment, and then like they're wrestling with their own kind of like, where do we go with this story? What do we
Hmm.
do with these things? And it's nice that it can show up inside of a story about Ikora, but it also shows you how much Ikora is kind of in this position that she never thought she would be in to begin with. And a lot of people
Hmm.
arrive at those things like you don't know necessarily where you're going to end up in life. Um, you may think you may have all of these convictions when you're young, and then when you get older, you realize there was a higher purpose for you, and so you
Hmm.
try to fulfill that as much as possible. But inside you, you're still kind of wrestling with your own, you know,
Uh,
inner demon.
yeah. So then the third tenant is to destroy thyself, and so the amendment in this one tells a story about Ikora fighting a an Ahamkara, and she
Yeah,
was wishing for people to be reborn that she had killed when they reached for her ghost. Winding stopped that from happening, But then the tenant itself actually says, when you have located yourself, destroy thyself. Grip yourself like a hand shaking a hand and find the weak places and squeeze.
Dude.
Which is exactly what we do with the ghosts in Witch
Yeah.
Queen.
That's freaky because then it raises this whole like uh question, right?
Yeah.
Like, are
Like,
we being lied to? Are we even there? Is this even reality? Kind of like these these things just start popping up in your mind when you read stuff like that. Like, are we just killing ourselves, or would this have never? Or have we somehow split off into
yeah.
some other parallel universe and we're destroying ourselves within? Yeah, it's crazy.
hmm the fourth tenant is shed thyself. And in this amendment, she adds talking about a different card. This is one of the few card that we actually know by name. Its name is Madhir. And to beat them, she allowed herself to become someone else. So Madhir changed her into someone who Madhir could not tempt. And she notes, I laugh much less since that day, but I am more content. Which it's like, so the
That's
Ikora
interesting.
that her ghost res is not the Ikora that she is today.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that kind of goes with, if you know Ikora's and her ghost relationship, it's very strained. They like don't communicate. Not so much as the Drifter hating his ghost, but it's just like they're they aren't the same people anymore. And that kind
Well,
of goes
also
back.
key into that because wasn't there a point at which Ikora and her ghost just flat out stopped talking to
Yeah,
one
that's what I
another?
mean.
Yeah,
So, I wonder if this was the point that they
that's
were
interesting.
no
Yeah.
longer in sync, and and this goes into what I was saying about the ego, the super ego.
Hmm.
Um, did Ikora change into someone new, but her ghost was still now a different person because the ghost and the risen are
Interesting.
two pieces of a whole, but now one piece has been changed.
It's funny because the voice actor definitely changed.
uh, then tenant 5 is embrace a new skin. Tenant 6, become the many. And tenant 7, we are unseen, we are as death.
Hmm.
So very edgy, Ikora.
Very edgy. Yeah, but she's pretty edgy.
Like I get that she's a badass, but it's this like this long-winded way of like
Ikora is
I don't
definitely
get it.
one of my favorites and always has been. I, I'm a little ashamed that that at when we first started playing the game, I couldn't stand her when we first because she was so annoying. Like she just kind of made that whole like she seemed to me at the very beginning of the game before we knew anything to be just like a caricature, like almost like a stereotype
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people didn't see that, but I kind of felt like, oh, this is the badass, snarky, yeah, in game, great. But then quickly that all changed. Like when the Dark Below came out, I was like, oh my god, she's awesome.
Yeah.
She's the best.
We're gonna see some more about her and her personality later on in this. But to continue, we have the consensus personal kind of IMs between Ikora and Zavala as they play a game together. Uh,
Hmm.
he mentions placing a stone at 6 by 24. So I don't know what game they're playing that involves stones. It might be
Well,
based on a real game. Did you have a suggestion?
I have no idea what that
Oh, okay.
means.
Um, and then Zavala is snarky and says, I'll get back to you after the consensus meeting, or you'll be distracted the whole time trying to think up your reply. And it's like, yeah, ha ha ha. People really like those. I mean, that's funny and all, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, then we have another hidden report, this time from a guardian named Truce.
Hmm.
And this is on the subject of the latest stasis behaviors. And so, like I said earlier, we start to look at how stasis has changed. And so, stasis in the game has been nerfed many times now. It does not
Yeah.
operate as it used to. And so he actually says, let's say they're right, and stasis has in some way changed itself. Why would stasis weaken its effect against other guardians? I'll tell you exactly why. Same reason a virus evolves a strain that won't kill its host. People were turning against stasis, didn't like what it was doing to their crucible, so stasis made itself nicer, so we'd keep on using it. If stasis was better than what the traveler gave us, we wouldn't be able to accept it as just another colorful species of whoop
Yeah.
ass. We might get scared of it. But this way, it's nice and balanced. Everything kept in a proper balance, and doesn't balance sound like a goal worth striving for?
Ulan Tan.
And he also mentions how a virus, if I'm trying to find it now, I didn't put a comment on it. Uh, if a virus were able to make its okay, a virus will crank up its lethality to 99% so long as the viciousness also lets it reach a new host. If a virus can make people explode like rotten balloons and infect everyone nearby, a
Yeah.
virus would do it. Viruses don't give a damn for anything except making more of themselves. They certainly don't give a damn for their own long-term viability. They're too stupid to think that far in advance. So keep that in mind when it comes to assessing the safety of stasis. After all, it's a power we use to exploit each other like rotten balloons.
So it's infecting one another. So like this idea that the more people play with it, the more other people are gonna want to play with it, and it's just
Hmm.
kind of infecting the pure uh what is the best light? Like what is the light that's considered good up
In
until this
in
point?
in my opinion, because it's not light and dark as separate entities, they exist on a spectrum. They
Sure.
they that for so that means you have, like you're saying, what is the lightest light and what is the darkest dark.
Darkest light.
And so solar is the lightest light, arc, void, because back in the dark ages, even void was seen as like, whoa, that's too dark for
Corruptible,
us.
yeah. Yeah.
Then stasis, whatever the second one would be, and then finally taken as the truest form of darken, because the act of taking something is, as actually mentioned in here,
Yeah.
winnowing away something until its most perfect form.
Yeah. So I had a new thing come up because I was thinking about like the poison subclass and I was thinking about like just what could come next type of thing. You know, we all do that. We love to,
Hmm.
think about what's next.
Yeah, who
Even
doesn't?
so um so I was thinking like as a whole, I did this a long time ago, where I tried to define like the three elements in
Hmm.
game that we use before we got stasis. Which, if you strip down stasis to its base level, it's kind of just entropy in a manner. It's taking everything out of something until nothing's left, but a reaction to nothingness, which is cold freezing, because that's how that exists. So anyway, the
So
dead
you're
cold.
actually you're actually skipping ahead. The appended file on the stasis of Truce's ghost Cowlick, they did a study on it, and they say it just sucks entropy out of the system until it's got a crystal.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I was when we first learned about stasis, and
Hmm.
that's really what I was keying into when I was trying to define the elements originally. And so I saw that coming. It was just funny because there was the whole like social media fight about, oh, it's ice powers, and
Yeah,
yeah, it is, but it's entropy, like creating ice out
yeah.
of nothingness, because when you have nothingness, the only thing that's left is the crystal, right? So
Hmm.
so anyway, so that made me think about, well, how does all of this work within a universe that's full of matter and dependent on these fundamental laws that are a part of the building blocks of the universe. And then so I started to think about one of the things that was in Destiny very early on, which was alchemy, and
Hmm.
how does alchemy incorporate within the world of Destiny, in the universe of Destiny? And alchemy is an alchemical reaction. It's chemistry. It's protochemistry. It's this idea that chemically things can be created or destroyed in certain ways or manipulated in certain ways. And if you look at the hive as a whole, they kind of have, with paracausality, obviously, because that's how any of this crap happens anyway. Like solar, it happens. You can manipulate soul fire because of paracausality. It's not fire exists always. It's not electricity exists always. It's not
Hmm.
gravity exists always. It's, yeah, those are parts of the universe that we are somehow able to attune our light to and manipulate and use as weapons, right?
Yeah.
So, chemistry or alchemy is one of those things that the hive have attuned themselves to and be able to use, because just like dredge and yore, just like uh, a lot of the hiveness that's happened, weapons of sorrow, the thing that keeps coming up is the poisoning, right? And how it devours and
Hmm.
decays. All of those things are chemical reactions. All of those things are taking matter and
Yeah.
decaying it to another form.
Yeah. So that
So
that that makes sense for the next step.
yeah. So when Void was heretical, Void was very much using the absence of light to punch through and pull by using gravitational gravity, the part of the universe that was later defined, but being able to punch through and pull something out from that in between layer of realities and then use it as a weapon. That's
Hmm.
Void. So Void is very mysterious in that way.
You know,
Void is using that gravity around you to punch through realities.
it's honestly like your Truce's ghost, because that's basically exactly what they say. Warlocks thought that if you carried out the impossible task of sucking all energy out of the volume of space-time, nulling out even the zero-point fluctuations and achieving a true void, then you could achieve a physical regimen where space and time themselves cease to exist. Instead, you'd get space-time condensate, a superfluid vacuum, going on. In
Yeah,
this theory, stasis crystals were a cold so deep that they froze space time itself. It had a
yeah.
certain elegance, but either the true void does not exist, or it is not here attained, or I am just misinterpreting this data.
There you go. So like there's a limit to as far as you can go with any particular elemental or a fundamental law of nature. So like at the root cause of existence are these material atomic uh, orbiting um, attractions that create, right? And then
Hmm.
there's also this anti matter, there's this annihilation of the universe. So things pop up and exist for unexplainable reasons just as they annihilate themselves. And that void as a whole plays with that. It's that interplay with how does something create and annihilate itself within
Hmm.
an instant and just pop and seems to pop in and out of existence from nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not meant to understand and know everything down to its, I mean, what's beyond the cork, right? You
Yeah.
know, like you can't go any further. Like there's only so far that you can go. And it's
Hmm.
okay. It's okay to not understand. It's okay to not know. You can be okay with not knowing something. It's that pursuit of knowledge that propels you forward. And so like these different facets of light are birthed from that, uh, because these guardians risens are playing with their paracausality. They're using it in ways that are really neat, like when Anna shoots her golden gun, right,
Hmm.
for the first time. How did that happen? She was backed into a corner when she discovered that ability. Is that how it happened?
Do you mean?
The pools of light, the pools of light lore
Oh, okay.
about, yeah,
You mean specifically, how did Anna create pools of light?
exactly.
Oh, okay. It sounded like you were, and I'm blanking on his fucking name, Shin Malphur. It sounded like
Yeah,
you were referencing Shin Malphur, who was
that's a good
not
one
exactly
too.
backed in the corner, but like just all of a
Yes.
sudden he felt the fire going down his arm, and it came out through his
Yeah.
gun, and
Yeah.
showed
So
up.
like attuning yourself into the situation, but evolution happens when the threat of extinction arises.
Yes.
There you go.
So then before we move on though, there is one other thing in Truce's uh I forgot what this I'm sorry, I'm blanking on words. Truce's thing here to Ikora hidden report. There we go. He says I see stasis users who shouldn't have any kind of power, never mind stasis.
Huh.
Does that mean non-risen are using stasis and like not Aramis and Aramis's lieutenants, because everyone knows Aramis and Aramis's lieutenants are using stasis? Does that mean non-risen humans are using stasis because the darkness was in them all along from the Cambrian explosion, as it actually says in uh the experimentalists out here mutter that stasis has a mind of its own, which is strange, right? Because they all insist that the darkness comes from within us. It's a part of us, some residue from the Cambrian explosion or whatever, which is actually in the same report. It's just a little further up. So it sounds like regular humans are using stasis, right? Am I crazy in thinking that?
Well, maybe not necessarily what you're saying, but like, yeah, in some way or form, the darkness and or the light is inside of us all in some facet or form. But like ultimately, being able to manipulate it is the paracausality of, or the ability of the risen. But like,
But
okay, so
do you
but
think it's
yes,
exclusively tied to Risen? Do you not? Do you think
I
it
I I do, only because what makes up a risen, it's that initial thing that caused them to be a remarkable entity in the universe. And so maybe in nature, this ability to become a risen is inside of us all, right? It's just that miraculous thing has to happen first. When and I only say that because we have a story of like a ghost leaving one particular guy and then going to another one.
we don't?
But
And that's what I
we
was
kind of do and
but
don't.
we kind of don't, because if we did, there would be evidence of such a thing
Ah,
happening, and ghosts do not understand if that is a possible thing. They
true.
question it.
Yeah.
If they continue to question it, then it means that it never historically happened. Could it have happened? Yeah, it could have happened, but it has not
I don't know.
historically
At
happened.
this point, it's just a tale.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I get it. It's just like I was just reading about. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sidebar, but it's Black History Month, and I was reading about Yasuki, who was the supposed first black samurai.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, historically, there's all this evidence that points to him as being the first black samurai. But then there's all these other, like, historians that argue and say, oh well, there's no way because like circumstantially it would have had to have arised under this particular way and stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff and argument and argument and argument, right? But at the end of the day, yes, it was because we have this story, we have this beautiful folkloric tale, just like we have all of these tales about other people that were here before us. And until that factually can be disproved or changed,
Mm-hmm.
it exists, and therefore, yes, he was. And so that's where I come to like some of these decisions. Like you have to use a certain bias, pro bias, or like this like it comes to a point where you kind of have to accept the tales and the
I
stories.
accept many things that are not entirely proven. and and my bias is of that ghosts have one guardian until I see an actual piece of evidence that suggests a ghost can have more than one guardian.
Yeah. Well, Savathun's got her own ghost, so
Savathun has Osiris's ghost, which would be an interesting way to pitch that.
yeah,
I
maybe
I I really hope that we're gonna hear Savathun's ghost talk, and it's gonna be Segura's voice
that would be
actress.
insane. That'd be kind of sad.
That would be impactful,
Yeah, it would.
to say the least. Um, okay, well, we've been at this for a little while, so let's
Yeah.
try to keep this going.
Oh,
Um, Ikora actually believes that she doesn't really fit in as anything that she, and this is kind of like what I was saying before, where you were like you didn't really like her and her personality, how it's developed and everything. Um, Cade was funny, and so people liked that he was this thing, and Shax is a thing. Shax shouts, Zavala fathers, Eris avenge,
Yeah,
Ziz. Uh, Ikora kind of doesn't do anything. And
right.
so she's in this position where she has to lead people, and she's like, how am I supposed to be a bulwark against their lies? But what if I'm supposed to be a bulwark against lies? But what if the guardian population like the liars more than me? She feels unlikable,
Right.
and I hope that in game as well, we're going to see a lot of Ikora's development finally happen.
That would be nice.
Yeah. And then it appears. Do you, off the top of your head, know who VIP 1316 is? I know Blue has a list, but I don't think 1316 exists.
No.
So, I'm pretty sure these are all spam hate mails from the Drifter because the first one reads, "Hey,
Wait, it
Ikora."
kind of goes into that hello first name and then a bunch of numbers.
Yeah, yeah, it's a cat. It's
Uh,
anonymous tower guest account 6C842D. Oh wait, look
That's
at that.
awesome.
Yeah. 1ALF. Oh no, it's ALF and A1F. Okay, so it's barely the same. Oh no, it is the
Yeah.
same. They must have just mistyped. So it's the same account. It's the same account, but it's got three different sign offs. So it's absolutely the Drifter. Thank you for pointing that out because that just confirmed it.
Yeah.
The first one reads, "Hey Ikora, did it ever occur to you that Aramis is a common language anagram for Am Eris? It's funny how Three Eyes works for you, but now she works with me. Maybe you weren't giving her enough chances to grow. No salutations entered. VIP 1316."
Wow.
Then, "Hey Ikora, did you sign off on this? Zavala ordered a search on my ship to get samples of my plants. They are known similarities between your vessel's infestations and the growths aboard the derelict Glycon Volatus. Tell the big guy that if he wants to get at my garden, he'd better start pounding some primevals. Transmat firing D." And then the last one, "Hey Ikora, I hate ice planets. Nothing good ever happens on an ice planet. You can't even burn guts for heat where there is no air. You and I you and I used to push the edge of the map, remember? My crew ended up out past Neptune exploring dwarf planets full of monoliths, but
Yeah.
now
It's,
you're one in the tower collecting the reports, making the maps. I always wanted to say I admire you for throwing everything behind the hunt for Prince Udon. At least you know how to stick up for your crew. Catch you soon, no man." So you had something to say there?
there's a lot to unpack in all of that
I
because
agree.
again, Bungie planting seeds and still trying to like lay them out in front of you. It's like they're just kind of scattering here and there because they're calling back to
Hmm.
certain things that have happened, like the monolith with Drifter, right? And him using guts to make a fire to keep himself warm. We know the story of the Drifter, so they're calling back to that. It's a callback.
And this
Um,
is probably the closest we've actually gotten to an understanding of where it was. I mean, there's
yes,
much past Neptune, but
yeah,
it does kind of sound like it's not that far if he's
right,
going past Neptune. Like that's his
yeah.
qualifier.
Ice planets, and they have monoliths on them, and so that harkens back to that mysterious thing that he was talking about that nobody can really define. What
Hmm.
the heck is the monolith, and why were there beasts in cages where he
Well, he's
was?
got
And
one on his derelict. Don't forget that.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. So
Like,
hopefully it'll pay off.
yeah. Um, and we've talked at length about the infestation on the derelict glycon
Yeah,
and his own plants and his garden. So it's really cool to see that Bungie's not giving up on that. I think that will be the key to the second darkness subclass.
yeah,
As we've said, a kind of poison-esque one. I don't think they're going to call it poison, just like they don't call stasis ice. I don't think it is poison. I think it will act
right.
similarly to poison, though.
it'll do the thing that everybody calls it, and then we'll all argue about what it actually is.
Yeah. Uh, the next letter is from Sen Arit, who is a guardian claiming to have been resurrected or claiming to have died 13,000 years ago. They were a female Kadan recovered from strata of Mesolithic battle site at the Jebel Sahaba in Egypt.
Yeah, that's pretty. This one I like because um, wh- I'm not going to go into that, but it's almost like a real thing. So, um, real quick,
Do you
this kind
think
of goes.
this is a real thing?
It
Before we get
kind of
into
is.
the
It kind
potential
of
guardian.
is. It kind of is. And maybe I'll put out a tweet about it because there's an item that's coming that has to do with it. And I can't wait until Witch Queen comes out because I wanted to find it like right away.
Okay,
But
okay,
it,
because I
but
was gonna
we'll wait.
say,
We'll wait on that one. But yes, it is kind of a thing.
well,
And so,
what I mean to say is, so I am a low power guardian, very big fanatic of your work as warlock caravan guard. Like it, it sounds like someone is just trying to annoy her, and
yeah,
part of me is like, is this fucking drifter still?
it could be. It could
Like,
be.
uh, great strain in process of my resurrection, and then in parentheses, original birth is not called surrection, death is not called desurrection, and it sounds like a lot of
Yeah,
shit posting, to be honest.
it is. It is. It's like the drifter doesn't know, how to be eloquent. He's trying. Yeah, it very much has to be the drifter.
Like, right? Like, you said that
Yeah,
there
it
was
is.
potentially something that corroborates it. So,
No, I just think where he's getting his factual knowledge from comes from real life, and like so, there's
okay.
something that specifically has to do with that. That it's like when you go on Google and you look up something. Like I do this all the time, and so I fall for these traps all the time because I don't know nothing. I just have this bad case of IOT. So I go out and I look for stuff and I try to find out what it is, and then I end up in these rabbit holes, and I go, "What is this?"
Hmm.
And then I learned about something that had nothing to do with what I was researching, and somehow I become like an accidental ornithologist, right?
Yeah.
Because I look. That's a comedian that said that once. He was like, I look up something and then I end up, yeah. So anyway, about something you had no intention of learning about, and
Yeah.
and that's what I love about this game is because it creates that hunger, that fire in me to go learn stuff that I otherwise probably wouldn't care about or have thought enough about to go research. And so that's one of the things I love about it. And so, in a
I
nutshell,
absolutely agree.
it's like the drifter went Google, give me something really cool to say or smart sounding, and then he regurgitated it, but kind of got it wrong
Yeah.
because he was trying to use it as ammo.
It just feels like someone's shit posting.
Yeah, it's totally shit. It's like when somebody says, "Well, actually," and then like
Yeah.
they only know just enough about something to get themselves in trouble in an
Yeah.
argument.
Uh, Next, we have another hidden report, this time from Honor, the Praxic Warlock, who
Oh
we
boy,
had
here
a
we
lot to
go.
do with in Season of the Drifter.
Yeah,
Uh, Nothing's really changed with her. She absolutely hates the use of stasis. She wants to go with war. Wants to go to war with everyone who uses stasis, etc., etc. And then she ends, "Tell me you haven't used stasis. Tell me you haven't." And then we get their back and forth messages of
yeah,
Ikora kind of dodging the question and Honor being like, answer my question, and Ikora dodging the question and her saying, answer my question, and then Ikora finally saying, of course I haven't used it. I need to be a flawless leader. I need to be twice as good, twice as often. I can't afford an indiscretion like stasis.
yeah. Because well, Honor would totally go crazy.
Yeah, Honor would like literally go up and kill Ikora.
Everything. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's crazy. But so like that's that whole fanatical experience with the Praxics being. I don't want to say like all the Praxics are that way, but like the hard right leaning Praxis.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong.
you know that. So anyway, I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah. So then we have another Ikora Zavala IM where they're continuing to talk about their game because Ikora is metagaming according to Zavala. And Ikora replies, I'll get back to you after the consensus. I don't want to spend the whole session planning. I don't want you to spend the whole session planning your reply, which is what he said to her, which is weird. It's like how in and out of meetings are they with the consensus?
Yeah, that is weird. Like, how often does that even is that a thing?
Because
It's almost like, it, are they still having in this world in this universe? Are they still having meetings to plan another meeting? You know,
I mean,
like
it sounds like they are. It just sounds like there's just nothing of but meetings, and it's
yeah, you
kind
would
of
think we would have
crazy.
evolved like as a species beyond this point, but it still apparently happens.
Hmm. Um, so then we go from there, and we have uh, this time a hidden report by Ikora and personal examination of the Glycon volatus derelict. And so I was just kind of breaking down how the derelict or how the Glycon felt, how everything went wrong, and it starts to bring up things like the unveiling missives, which came in the season of Arrivals. Ikora was getting the unveiling missives. It's known as the lore book Unveiling. So it's really interesting because now we have like the Book of Sorrows and the unveiling missives. There's a lot of things that Eris is involved with that is kind of like introduction to darkness for general guardian population use, you know. And then we
Yeah,
have Elsie's timeline where Eris is a bad guy, and it's like, at what point can we? I've never been on the side of, oh, Eris is up to something, Eris is bad. I'm like, no, Eris is traumatized. Like, give her a fucking break.
right.
Um, but now it's starting to feel a little too much. Like, at what point do you stop someone from like, okay, but why are you translating like Nazi propaganda for English?
Right. Right.
Like,
Right. Are you gonna become so much of a sympathizer that you just end up becoming the monster? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like it's one thing to be like, oh, well, we have to understand our enemy. I get that, but maybe don't be like, man, look at what they believed, and give it to everyone, and like start
Yeah.
getting people to believe it
Like, just
too.
letting everyone have Mein Kampf. Here you go. Just read
Yeah,
it.
there's a line that I'm afraid she's going to cross.
Yeah. You know, and that happens a lot too. Like, how much, like, when is information considered like detrimental to society?
Uh, and so from there, we have a VanNet personal message. There's so many different types of messages as
The
well.
Van Nets are cool.
But I mean, there's so many different types of messages where it's like consensus personal, VanNet personal, and then you have these just like independent IM messages, like they have fucking cell phones still.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot, but this one is from Shax to Ikora, and so Ikora and Zavala's is VINCINC or CINC. Wait, what the fuck? Let me find Zavala's again. So VANCINCTAN. So Vanguard, I don't know what the CINC is, Titan, right? And then Ikora's is VANCINCLOCK, Vanguard CINC Warlock. Shax's, however, is I just scrolled right past it. I am the Cruce Shax. So I am the Crucible. Oh, I guess we lost Rhino. You got Big Me now. I don't like having Big Me. Uh, I'll just keep it going. Hopefully he can make it back. And so Shax is I am the Crucible Shax. What I really like about this personally though is that Shax is typing in all lowercase. He has no capitals even at the start of a sentence, and he talks about his. This is probably one of the biggest things that happened from this collector's edition lore. He talks to Ikora about his time with Marasav. Specifically, it Rhino's computer is updating. Specifically, the uh, the helmet stayed on episode, and the helmet stayed on when he was just reminiscing to Marasov about a woman they both cared about, Shuraido. So nothing actually happened with Shax and Marasov. There are many people who were like avidly against that, and so it's pretty cool to see that kind of like come full circle. Uh, and then moving on to another, this is a little surprising. Apparently, Fenchurch is also a hidden agent, and Neville, as the report goes. And in this report, Fenchurch recalls a vision he had in which Eris goes to Mara and talks about the darkness is coming, and Mara sees fit to leave the reef with Eris and go after the darkness. And that is where uh, Mara approaches a pyramid and punches it and destroys the pyramid, which many people should know is actually from a lore entry we've had since Forsaken from the Sleepless rocket launcher, which is one of the Dreaming City rocket launchers. In this entry, Shuraido is telling Mara a dream she had that takes place in the future. She says, and I was dead, I think. She cracks her neck with a delicious loud pop, or trapped like in a maze, but pretty close to figuring my way out. Sure stands to stretch. She does not mind that Mara is not listening. Let her read. And there was another woman with you. On the triangle, Mara murmurs. Yeah, she was helping. Then your brother showed up, and she shakes out her arms, frowning thoughtfully. The dream is already fading. He said Tropea, or maybe it was tropical. Anyway, at the start of it, I was dreaming. I saw you on a great black triangle. You split it in two with your bare hands. I skipped over that part by accident. So this has already happened. Mara has actually single-handedly destroyed a pyramid, and it happened off screen. I was kind of hoping that it would happen in the future, but that does suggest that sure Ido is currently trapped in what I like to call the labyrinth. There are many labyrinths throughout Destiny right now, and there are more in the collector's edition. I will be posting images on the Loose Canon when I get my own. This labyrinth, the maze that she mentions being trapped in, she's not dead. She's trapped in it. When we went to her statue to get the Wish Under bow, she mentioned that she would return one day and she would actually come and take Wish Under back from us, which is kind of funny to think about, like her actually taking it from us. So eventually, and if this had already happened, it kind of does corroborate the potential that Shurida will come back sooner rather than later. Then the message ends, and then Ikora sends a message back to Fenchurch, and she's talking about Mara, and she says, "I believe Mara has begun to consider that she may not be the prime executor of her own endgame. She may just be a component of the bomb, a payload or a timing device at the end of her own journey. She is necessary but not sufficient. She can no longer fight alone." So this might actually be one of the most important happenings, because this might be the instance where Mara does things differently. Instead of thinking that she can do it on her own, she's going to rely on the Guardians to use light and dark to help her take out the darkness. Where in all of Elsie's other futures and other timelines and other loops, even Mara Sov has failed. And maybe this is the thing that needed to change. It ends. All right, no, it doesn't end. I'm sorry. Not having Rhino here is rough because now I have to do stuff like that. Um, I'm really sorry about this. Uh, Ikora responds to Chalco all the way from the beginning, where it was his first message. She kind of confesses to him all about the doubts she has. You know, she's saying, I have all these doubts within me, and I feel like I'm not going to be able to like actually be there in the end and succeed, and people are going to need to rely on me, and it's not good. And she thanks him for, she says, thank you for your report. I don't know what to call what we are, Chalco. uh Potentially her. I think Chalco might be a woman. It's just that what we are, thanks to you always writing. Maybe I can find some clarity and action now that I've gotten this out. Keitel sends a report from her scribe to Ikora, demanding to know if any guardians are in talks with Callus after the Glycon, even though Keitel oversaw the Glycon expeditions. Uh, Zavala and Ikora go back and forth about that report, and Ikora says, "Has someone been?" Or Ikora says, "I'm relieved I didn't think of that. I don't feel much of a ruler. Guardians only listen to me if they feel like it. Have you ever considered a state marriage to Keitel to solidify our alliance?" And Zavala says, "Have you?" Which is, one of those meme things that are going around now. Ikora responds to Keitel, basically saying, we haven't spoken with Callus, and if we do, you're going to need to give us something before we just give you that information yourself. Um, and then the final thing, what I thought was a little bit earlier, is a battery test battery results on Ikora by Chalco, basically explaining a psych evaluation. If Ikora were to ever to become so bad, how do you stop Ikora? And Ikora is such a badass that he's like, no one is actually going to be able to stop her. She would kill anyone who tried to come and actually defeat her in a one-on-one fight. But if you needed to, if I can name a single weakness in Ikora, it is her distance. It is her distaste for doubt. She thinks quickly and clearly. She is accustomed to receiving the highest quality information and subjecting it to the most pristine and multiply contingent analysis. Cut off her senses, make her anxious, force her to doubt herself, and then flood her with contradictory and high stakes decisions which cannot be optimized. She will either paralyze herself or turn to raw fury. The fury, at least, is predictable. Uh, so that ends the collector's edition. I'm sorry that Rhino dropped out. His computer had an automatic update, so it just kind of hit him out of nowhere today. That's going to be it for our episode this week. We hope that you enjoy Witch Queen on the 22nd, and it's 9 days away. On the 27th, Rhino and I will be back. We'll be talking about Witch Queen story. Hopefully, the whole story, the whole expansion's campaign can be played all the way through, and we're gonna have our thoughts on that. You can find us on Twitter at Loose Canon Show, as it is spelled down there. It's CANON Show. From there, you can find all our YouTube upload, podcast upload, wherever you can find us if you were not here for the whole show and you want to listen back to it, or watch it on YouTube because it also goes up there. And that's going to be it for me. So, bye, everybody.